let's see, let's get started. So I am Zero, everyone, and this is my Twitch stream, Zero Does Stuff. I'm so sorry for the issues that we just had, and hopefully they have somehow miraculously fixed themselves because internet? I don't know. Anyway, so for those of you who are new to the stream, you have what are called Kiwi coins at the bottom of your chat window. So you see the little Kiwi icon. If you click on those, you can see how you can spend the Kiwi coins that you will accumulate by following, subscribing, just sitting here, interacting, existing, whatever it is. We have a challenge in there at the moment. If we get enough Kiwi coins, I will run a mini D&D campaign. I have 2 ideas, and one is more evil than the other, but I want to do the less evil one first because it's one thing to be a player on a stream. It is another thing to run a game on a stream, as I found out last weekend. Holy fuck, it is so much more effort. I mean, we got it easy being podcasters, creating games. It is much easier. And you can edit it. You cannot edit it when you're live on stream. Anyway, I think that's
Editing is magical.
Oh, editing is magical, isn't it? Yes, this message has highlighted the real POTUS. Why, yes, it is cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's get started. Today I have a very special guest. This is Quinn Majeski. Sorry, Majeski from Monster Hour. I will let him introduce himself and tell you all his credentials, I guess. Welcome aboard, Quinn.
Thank you so much for having me. Credentials makes me sound very formal and experienced. So I'm Quinn Majeski. I am the designer of Absurdia, a absurd modern tabletop RPG. I am also the keeper, game master, producer, herder of cats, which I believe is the extra moniker here.
Yeah.
Monster Hour, which is an actual play podcast. We played Monster of the Week in season 1. Had a big, long 2.5-year campaign, and then we were actually playing Absurdia for season 2, and we're about, let's see, what are we? We're 11 episodes in right now. That's me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you guys have been around for a while, Monster Hour, so you've probably inspired a good few many Monster of the Week podcasts, including my own. And it's kind of funny. It's like you inspired Shrimp and Crits, which inspired me, and yeah, so it's an ongoing thing. Like, you guys got in really early and have done it so well.
Oh, thank you.
Real POTUS says, Zero, you always land the coolest guests. We're trying to make them blush the same color as the stream background, aren't we, here, folks? Dixon says I make it sound like a pyramid scheme.
Kind of.
Would be
the pyramid scheme of getting people into awesome tabletop role-playing games and actual play podcasts.
Yes. I mean, don't you find that as soon as you find other people who are like, oh man, I really wouldn't mind doing that, and you're just kind of like, do it. You need to do it.
More.
Yeah.
We won't stop until everyone has an actual play podcast.
We're all listening to each other. Yeah. So let's get started. Have you made a tabletop roleplay game before, or is Absurdia your first one?
I have made exactly one game before. It's a 1 or 2 page, I can't remember. I did it for a random game jam like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's a hack of Honey Heist and Lasers and Feelings called Campfire, which is modeled after like Evil Dead, like classic like Cabin in the Woods, like dumb like teenagers go into a dangerous situation and have horror and hormones, but that was like
Was that the
Just
two kinds of roles, horror and
no,
hormones?
no. It's the two. Your two stats are camp and fire.
Ah.
Um, so yeah, I've designed one game before, but that was just like a goofy little hack. This is my first sort of real game, like fully fledged game.
Yeah, not a one pager, but a mini
Yeah.
pager. Okay, cool. So, what actually made you come up with Absurdia? What was like sparked it? Because it's like you could change an existing game to sort of work with it, but what made you think, no, I need to do this from the scratch almost?
Yeah.
Actually, what sort of generated it was me trying to. I wanted to play
what has basically become season 2 of Monster of the Week,
Mm-hmm.
or Monster Hour. I wanted to play a game that was sort of modeled after Welcome to Nightdale, Gravity Falls. That really sort of modern, surrealist, absurdist element. And I couldn't find one that I liked. And I thought about, you could do a heavily modified version of Monster of the Week, but or probably some other game. I know there's Troika is another game that captures sort of that absurdist essence, but it's a little more almost like fantasy oriented, kind of like Monty Python esque. Um, and what I really wanted was like, that sort of modern surreal suburbia vibe with a PBTA system. And I wanted it to fit well, as opposed to being like a hack of like a, not just a hack, but like a complete overhaul of another game. And so I started making my own game so that I could play that. And that was really the genesis of Absurdia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've also seen that there's a Monty Python RPG that has been released at the moment. I think it's on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I did see that. Obviously, that's just coming out, but somewhat similar vibes, a little bit more. Well, I don't know if it's just Holy Grail or if it's other Monty Python stuff, but um, you know, could certainly capture a similar feeling.
Okay. So, what's your favorite thing about Absurdia? Whether it's a rule mechanic or one of the playbooks or, yeah, or anything in there?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I let's see. I really like. There's several of the playbooks that I really like. I think that I don't think you really see or get in other games. I think the Beeromancer was one of the very first playbooks that I conceptualized when I was starting to make Absurdia. This kind of like archetypal pencil pushing bureaucrat, stuck in this machine like hierarchy, but also they're a little bit of a wizard, more or less. The Zeitgeist, I think, is that one took me probably the longest to kind of like work the mechanics out, but I was really pleased with where it wound up. Play like being able to play as like a group, basically as like this sort of hive mind that inhabits several bodies, and the mechanics for that get to be really cool. How you for that playbook, your harm boxes, each one represents a person in this sort of collective, and they can individual bodies can get taken out. There's different types of bonuses for if like all your bodies are together in a scene versus like if they're separate and like trying to do different things. Generally, you're stronger if more of your bodies are together, but that also makes you more vulnerable. Whereas if you're spread out, and the paradox, I think, is a really cool one. This notion of like, because nothing has to really make sense in Absurdia, so this notion of like a time traveler, however you want to interpret that, just like breaking all the rules of time and all the moves that you can make work with that. I think the playbooks really help the setting shine through in my mind.
Hmm. Hmm. I just want to go back to the hive mind typed one. What was the inspiration behind that? Where have you seen the hive mind examples and absurdist shows and books, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple examples. Probably the best sort of raw example, if anyone is familiar, there's um, a series of books that were made into a bad TV show, but the books are great, called Rook. Um, and in that, there's a person or a group or an entity, whatever you want to call it, that's four people, four siblings who all share one consciousness. And that sort of notion kind of uh, formed the basis of the mechanics. I would say, in media, um, thinking like there's one of the Futurama movies has there's a creature that kind of takes over everyone's bodies and attaches to them, and they all become sort of a collective consciousness. In Rick and Morty, there's Unity, the sort of alien that brings everyone together into this collective consciousness. And for anyone who's listened to Monster Hour in season one of the monsters kind of forms an evil version of a zeitgeist. I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's not familiar with our first season, but those were some of the influences that came together for that.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about so many of them. Dixon is given the example of the Children of the Corn. That's more a horror example, but sure.
Yeah. I've actually never seen Children of the Corn.
Nor have I. Don't worry, you're not alone.
Sorry, Dixon. It's that one's right over my head, but
Yeah. Some of the questions that I'm asking have been provided by Dixon. He said he will have more in the chat, so we'll see what else he can come up with.
Sounds good.
What I've really liked about because I played it with you. You've run it for myself and Alice from Once Upon a Monster of the Week for the International Podcast Month, and I did share that link in Twitter. I should probably get it and share it again in here, but
yeah, everybody go listen to it. It kicks ass.
It is so awesome. Usually I don't get to go as crazy because I'm always intimidated by the number of other really impressive players around me, and I feel kind of like, oh, I've got to play a bit more serious or something because they've gone and done all the crazy things. But it was just me and Alice, and I think I got in first, so I got to go crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. Like, Absurdia encourages you to every instinct you have as a player to just like take a normal game off the rails or do something like completely outlandish and ridiculous that normally would be, kind of at best comedic relief, at worst like a faux pas at the table. Just take all of that and make it the absolute centerpiece of your game.
Yeah.
Which you did an excellent job of in our one shot.
Thank you. You played an excellent sidekick with Wendell there. I loved Wendell.
Wendell rocked.
Royal POTUS says this game wants you to go off the rails. I'm in. Yeah, we went off the rails.
It does. It wants you to go off the rails. Please.
Yeah, totally.
Please take it off the rails.
Yeah. When I was making my character, because for those interested, I took the Void Keeper, which is essentially kind of like a librarian, except instead of taking books, we take memories and archive them. So and I just was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I can work with this, because it was either that or the hive mind. But I was like, I feel a bit too intimidated by the hive mind with a new game, so I'll leave that for someone else. What I found awesome is that For those of you who are familiar with Monster of the Week, with the Crooked, you kind of have it asks you for your background information, and it's something like who's your rival and maybe who's your ally. And I've never thought to apply that to every single character, and Absurdia encourages this and encourages every character to have a friend or an ally and a rival. So, and I'm like, this is so obvious. Looking back at it now, it's like I should be doing this for every tabletop RPG game. All of the characters. It just blew my mind. I was like, dang.
Yeah, I can't claim credit for that one. Blades in the Dark has something similar, and a lot of 50 games, Fortune in the Dark games do. But I think it's a great element, and I do think more games should do it because whether if you're running a one shot, I've run quite a few of Absurdia at this point. I always want to run more, but as the GM, like it's a set piece that you can use, just plug and play however, like in your episode, because like you need someone to antagonize the players. Great, you've got a stable full of rivals. You need someone to lend a helping hand. You got some friends. Like it's super helpful as a GM. So I think more games should do it.
Oh yeah, and I am totally going to be doing it for pretty much every game I run from here on. It helps them, the players, create more of the game before the game's even started. So you've got more resources to pull from and don't have to come up with these things on your own. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so simple.
Let your players help create the game. It works better that way.
More invested, especially if it's a rival, because as soon as you brought my rival in, I was like, I fucking hate you. I am,
Yep.
I really hate it out for him,
Everybody does. You let people create their own rivals and they hate them just the right amount.
Because there's no guarantee when you as the GM bring in someone who could be a rival that they even think of them as a rival or treat them as a rival. They're just like, just dismiss them or whatever. But if you want a real antagonist in there that they are going to really feel something towards, have them create their own antagonist, man.
Yeah.
Okay. First time chatter from the Keeley. Plus the faction roles. What exactly about the faction roles are you talking about? Because that was the one thing for me I had some issues with. Not because of how it was written, but because I'm one of those people who really needs everything explained to me in minute detail multiple times for it to sink in. So I think during the game, I basically said to you, just tell me when I need to roll and then tell me if it's good enough, because I don't quite get it. But I think it's a brilliant idea. Could you explain to the audience what exactly faction roles are?
Yeah. So, anyone who's familiar with PBTA games knows kind of like the basic role system. So you've got, your stats or your ratings for your character, and they correspond to different basic moves. Well, what I wanted to do for Absurdia was kind of amplify some of the social elements, and like when you think about like elements in a normal town, there are factions. There's different sort of groups, and they're not usually not at war, but they disagree on things, and I wanted to sort of transpose that element into an absurd, surreal, Welcome to Night Vale-esque style of town. And there are other games that do this. Root RPG and Urban Shadows have factions. And so the notion basically is there are 4 factions in the game: Bureaucracy, Community, Underbelly, and Entropy. Each of the playbooks is sort of aligned with one of those factions. And you have ratings with each faction, just like you would have for your basic stats. So you might have, +1 with Bureaucracy. So you have, a decent reputation. You maybe have done them a favor. You have some friends. You -2 with Underbelly. You're a real pain in their ass. And whenever you interact in certain ways with the factions in the town or important people from those factions, you make a faction roll. So instead of rolling with one of your basic stats, you roll with your reputation, with your faction rating, because it's not about how like persuasive you are, or how strong you are, or whatever, how clever you are. It's about how good of a reputation you have. And so there's five faction rules in the game. I'm not going to be able to remember them all now off the top of my head, of course, but that's kind of generally how they function. And they cover a range of like social dynamics, and honestly, I tried to capture some areas where I felt like basic moves fall down a little bit in PBTA, which is really dealing with like groups of people, or like so a group of people from one faction. So there's moves like rally, where you use your reputation with a faction to get a group of people to do things, and if it goes well, then generally they'll do what you ask, and they'll stand up to dangerous foes, or they'll call in additional resources from their faction. Even when it goes well, you owe them a debt, because if you get a large group to do something, they're gonna want a favor. But if it goes poorly, then they might run away at the first sign of resistance, or they might intentionally mishear, or wildly or willfully misinterpret what you wanted them to do, and sort of take your request and bend it to their own purposes. So faction moves cover some of those like broader social dynamics that the basic moves don't necessarily capture.
Yeah, I think because a lot of games started out probably more in the early days of tabletop RPGs as more being combat, or this happens and that happens, and the actual role play aspect is something that's really come up more in recent years. So it's really good to actually see mechanics that'll actually highlight the role play side of things.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I really tried to do with Absurdia, was make it so that combat isn't like the only option, or necessarily the first option. Because when you think about some of the source media, Welcome to Night Vale, Alice in Wonderland, Gravity Falls, Twilight Zone, Infinity Train, like there's some fighting, but a lot of times if you just charge into a dangerous situation, some cosmic horror is running the laundromat now, and you just run right in headlong, you're gonna die. Or you're gonna get sucked into an alternate dimension. So what I tried to do in creating the game was structure the basic moves such that there are lots of different options for solving a situation. And part of this is also on the back end, on the GM side, encouraging non-combat solutions and being open to non-combat solutions. But like, there's only one combat move in Absurdia, and it's fight for your life, which I wrote intentionally that way. Like, it's dangerous to go attack a sentient car, or a living conscious plant, or a beeromancer, whatever it is. Like, it's supposed to be dangerous, and there's lots of other options. There's a move for running away. There's a whole move for running away, because running away is important sometimes. And so really trying to create those different avenues for addressing problems that don't just rely on combat.
Yeah, and I guess that is part of the absurdist nature, is something absurd happens before violence should even be considered.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you
Definitely.
said, the fight for your life, just even in the title shows this is a last resort move. Have you tried everything else before you resort to actual violence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
A question about buying Absurdia. The real POTUS says he's bought it. He just wants to know, how long after someone's bought it will a community copy be available? I guess that's really an itch question.
No, well, if someone knows how to set it up so that itch automatically adds a community copy every time there's a purchase, tell me, because I'm not an expert on itch. So my answer, unfortunately, is when I check and remember to update the community copies, what I'm going to do after the stream. So
Yep, because you've already made one sale, so.
yeah, I think I got an email or something. I think there's a couple others. So yeah, there will be some more community copies soon.
Okay. Let's see. Dixon has added something. Despite the absurdist nature, do you feel that the game leans a bit more into horror as its secondary genre?
Yeah, probably. I like horror. I think there's an understated or an undercurrent of horror in most absurdist, literature or media, because there's something inherently unnatural about absurdism and surrealism. It's meant to evoke kind of like the uncanny valley of what we know and expect versus the completely incomprehensible. And so I think there is a natural element of horror there. Even, a lot of Absurdia draws from like kind of contemporary Western animation. So like Gravity Falls, like Infinity Train, things like that. And even those, like, they're I'm not going to say children's animation, but they're geared towards young adults. Certainly, I enjoy watching them, so it's not age limited. But even those have an element of spookiness, of horror at their core, even when they're being comedic. So I definitely think there's an element and a second sort of subgenre of horror to Absurdia.
Yeah. It's also like you've got to add that element of danger and the scary unknown.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
comes with something like this. Speaking of Gravity Falls, I hadn't watched it before, so when I found out that I actually was going to be playing Absurdia with you, I was like, I need to go watch this, and ended up binge watching the whole thing.
It's so good.
It is.
Yeah. Gravity Falls was a strong influence. Probably not. I don't think anything was as strong of an influence as Welcome to Night Vale on Absurdia, but Gravity Falls was definitely up there. If anyone hasn't watched it, it's very good, and I highly recommend it.
I do too. And I was originally against it, but then it was like, yeah, I should watch this, and I was like, why didn't I watch it sooner? So yeah.
Why were you against it?
I don't know. It was kind of like, Western cartoon, I haven't really watched many Western cartoons lately. I'm totally into the anime, man. Which can be quite absurd itself sometimes, but yeah.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Whoa, we've got a question from the Kile. Using your essence is one of my favorite mechanics. Can you talk a little bit about how fractures work and how they tweak your basic moves?
Yeah, definitely. So, part of trying to steer Absurdia away from being like, you go fight things, was adding something besides a harm track that can, like a different dimension of tension and stakes. And that's where the essence system came in and the fracture system came in. So, you can get hurt and die in Absurdia. Fine. Kind of boring, but whatever. You can do it if you want to. You can also, succumb to the absurd surrealism of the town. So, the players and the playbooks, everything, each one of them has something that makes them able to do more than just kind of like survive the day-to-day of Absurdia, the day-to-day of contending with a world that is, out of whack and doesn't make sense and is racked with chaos and entropy. And that's, as a mechanic, introduced as essence. And so, that as you go out and contend with things, whether it's
cosmic horror or navigating the social pitfalls of a PTA fundraiser, you can get worn down. Your essence can get worn away, whether you're spending it or whether you're sort of suffering ill effects. And when you get too worn down, just like real life, you suffer a fracture. And so that's kind of like the alternate way of raising that tension, because you can only fracture so many times before you break completely, and then your character's toast. So back to the question, I think, was it how fractures work and how they tweak your basic moves. So yeah, so when you run out of essence, you drop out of the scene. So whatever the scene is, you maybe you physically leave, maybe you go unconscious, maybe you drop into a shadow dimension or something else, however you want to play it. And then when the next scene starts, you come back, you clear your essence track, but you have a fracture. There's some examples in the book of what fractures can be, but generally it's some sort of adjective to describe how you as a character have been changed, how the chaos of the town has changed you. And you assign your fracture to one of your basic moves, and whenever you make that move going forward, you make a fractured move. So say you were at the PTA fundraiser, and for whatever reason you ran out of essence, so now you have the fracture closed off, or homebody, maybe, whatever it is. Social interaction is a chore at this point. You assign your fracture to sway, because why would you want to interact with other people? Horrible, gross, terrible. Whenever you make that roll from that point on, you make a fractured roll. So when you succeed, you mark essence, because you have to push through that fracture. It's more difficult, it takes more of sort of that reserve of strength that you have as a character. But the flip side of this is when you fail that roll, when you sort of dive into your fracture, for I guess for lack of a better word, you gain experience. Absurdia doesn't follow the experience system that a lot of PBTA games use, where if you fail a roll, you gain experience. I'm happy to talk about that too, but I want to try to answer this question first. But once you start getting fractures, that actually becomes an avenue. And so that's kind of how the fracture system works in fractured moves. Most characters can only accumulate 4 fractures before they are forced to retire, or they hit the end of the line. There's a few options for what you can do at the end of the line with your character. So yeah, there's the harm track, but there's also the fracture track for managing your character's long-term prospects.
It's almost like their mental health in a sense.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I try to stay. I don't want it necessarily to reflect like, because there's a lot of stigma around mental health, and well-being, and I don't want that sort of conflation necessarily, but it's more your sort of each playbook's reserve of strength to contend with the external surreality of the town.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned XP and how it's different from other Powered by the Apocalypses. It seems it's a little bit harder to gain XP. What's your thinking about how you decided to do this kind of XP?
Yeah, definitely. So I think from a conceptual level, the reason I wanted to go this route was because, for other systems, it kind of makes sense. You learn from failure. You try to, I don't know, take a swing with a baseball bat at a vampire and you miss. Maybe you'll do better next time.
Yeah.
In Absurdia, the way I conceptualized it was, you're not necessarily like, you don't necessarily get to
get to learn from failure, because the predictive power of what has happened in the past that will necessarily happen in the future isn't the case. You really you sort of become more experienced, become more powerful by leaning into the aspects of your playbook, which in Absurdia are reflected in agendas. So each playbook gets to choose. There's 4 agendas for each playbook. You get to choose 2, and so they're kind of like narrative goals that you establish, and when you pursue and achieve those narrative goals, you gain experience. So I kind of wanted to both move away from this notion that you learn and grow from failure, which, while true in real life, is not necessarily true in this game.
Yeah.
And then also move towards more of a narrative system. I think I've seen and experienced, even in our season 1 game of Monster of the Week, there is sort of a self-limiting effect of, when you become more powerful, you tend to fail less, but you can reach a point where you basically sort of stop leveling up, which, is fine. Monster of the Week, most PBTA games are more narrative driven. But the other sort of side of my thinking here, aside from the game design sort of narrative conceptual reasons, was, well, if we slow XP game down a little bit, that's not the worst thing. Add a few more opportunities for improvements when you level up. Gives an option for a longer campaign for folks who are playing, without necessarily feeling like there's no advancement.
Yeah. I don't even know if I leveled up during our one shot. I mean,
yeah, I mean, even when I'm running Monster of the Week or other PBTA games, I usually don't keep track of experience in one shots, just because it usually isn't necessary or productive. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if either of you in our one shot leveled up.
no, because I mean, you've got the agendas, which I think is great. It gives you a focus, or a goal, or a suggestion on maybe how to play the character, or something like that. And I thought that was interesting. And they're all different depending on the playbook that you use. So it's almost, it's like, okay, this is your character that you're making, and here's some things that might help you, play this playbook, or play your character to this kind of, not really stereotype, but this is just some suggestions. If you play towards them as your goals, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too, but you'll never level up if you don't. So it's one way to kind of keep people on track, in a sense, to keep.
Yeah. And one of the things about PBTA, and one of the reasons I decided, because I considered a few different systems for this, but I mean, number one, I like PBTA, but number two, I think the real strength of PBTA is the playbooks, and part of that is, it's not just about sort of like what you're good at or your moves. It's also about, I mean, it is about the stereotype or the trope or the archetype that exists within the media, and your moves give you permissions to affect the game in ways that would be typical for that archetype. But a lot of not a lot, but there are other examples of playbooks in different PBTA games where certain advancements or other elements of the game kind of like give you a nudge about how to play. And I think that's the other component here, that those agendas really work with the rest of the playbooks to sort of highlight like how this archetype fits within the media, and how it would fit within the game.
Yeah, I love all the different ways each creator has come up with for Powered by the Apocalypse. It's almost like so different, because I saw that Michael Sands the other day he said that his I can't remember how he used to do XP, but it ended up changing to the failure side of things because he thought that was more made more sense for Monster of the Week. So yeah, but there's so many
Yeah.
different things.
I think I remember seeing an early version of Monster of the Week where like you got XP based on like using certain moves that aligned with different ratings, and like you would choose a rating to highlight, and if you it seemed quite complicated.
Yeah, very complicated. I'm so glad he changed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else we got here? Don't forget, audience, you too can ask questions. This is another one from Dixon from
Yeah,
that he
give it
gave
to
me
me.
earlier. So Monster Hour runs a 3-person player crew. What's your opinion on a smaller crew for Absurdia, or ultimately, how large is too large of a player number?
I mean, I don't think there's a limit. I don't think there's a minimum. I guess two. You need a GM and a player.
Oh,
I
yep,
tried to think
good
of
answer.
ways to create a GM-less option for Absurdia, and I didn't get there. Maybe someday.
Mm-hmm.
But um, my personal opinion is that I like running games for 3 players.
Yeah.
I don't. It's what I enjoy. Like 2 to 4, totally fine. I personally actually love running a one-on-one game, and I've done some like episodes of that for certain like NPCs and Monster Hour for season 1. Going to start doing them for season 2 too. Um, but I think Absurdia, and this kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier, because the focus isn't necessarily on combat, and it as the GM, you want to try to encourage players to or let them sort of find their own creative, weird solutions to whatever problem or threat you're putting forward. So um, you know party balance, it in PBTA, party balance isn't a thing like it is in D&D. But in other systems, there's a little bit more like there's some benefit to having, a range of people in your crew. I like to think that Absurdia works, if you're sort of GMing roughly rules as written. Um, it should work for any number of people because the goal is to get weird and
Yeah.
like come up with weird, surreal, solutions for whatever the threat is. So, I think the system can work for 1 player. I think the system can work for 3 players. I think the system could work for 5 players. I think it could work for 10 players. I wouldn't want to GM that, but if you are brave enough, um, I know Natalie from Storyteller Squad, they have a quite a large cast. Once Upon a Monster of the Week as like a rotating cast of 14. So, and obviously people in their home games do plenty of things. So, whatever you're comfortable with, I think the system supports it.
Yeah. And I think the great thing about Absurdia is, like you said, it encourages you to think way, 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 way out of the box. So it is one of those great games where you can introduce it as a one shot into something like your if your game table is usually D&D, to help them think out of the box, and then they can take that, realizing that there's this freedom to be even more creative, back to their D&D table, and think more about, oh, I don't have to go in with my axe all the time, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a similar way to, some people have said that playing Monster of the Week has made them go back to D&D and play D&D or run D&D very differently, to be way more open than.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I could create, a curriculum for people who were gonna run tabletop role playing games, especially D&D. It would be to stop playing D&D for at least a game, and go play PBTA or something else where the rules aren't as restrictive,
Mm.
and there's a little bit more creativity and shared narrative control, and then take that back to D&D, because like if you love D&D, play D&D. Like I think more people would love more things if they tried more things.
Mm.
But I think you can learn a lot and take a lot back to playing D&D from other role playing games.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, some people have even gone as far as to say, you know what? I don't want to play D&D anymore. It's too restrictive for me. I just want to keep playing Monster of the Week and other Powered by the Podcast or any other game.
Yeah.
I think Monster of the Week has been a really good gateway drug to people who've just been D&D to try something new. Because it's so easy to pick up just for a one shot.
Yeah, I mean, until I started playing Monster of the Week, I played pretty much exclusively D&D.
Me too.
And I haven't played D&D since the pandemic. I don't have a strong desire to go back. I don't know. I don't want to be like the person who's like, oh, D&D sucks. Because if you enjoy playing it, that's awesome. Like, keep doing it. You do you. But for me, I really enjoy the more flexible and co-designed narrative games.
Yeah, and that's I actually found out after playing Monster of the Week for a wee while. I was like, I kind of actually run D&D sort of a little bit like this to begin with. This is interesting, but this seems to suit me, my playstyle way more. So what I'm doing is, with going back to D&D, I intend to incorporate what I've learned from Monster of the Week, Absurdia, and Brindlewood Bay, and anything else I've played since then, and bringing it more into D&D and to see how that will go, because I think you do need to change things up. I mean, sure,
totally.
D&D is changing itself up a little bit at the moment, but I'm kind of like, oh, more books to buy, I'll just take what I've already got and, bring in other elements and go with that. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, here's a question from Dixon. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to listen to it screaming, how many new Sploot ads does Claire post about in her worm simulator?
Infinite.
Infinite. Good
Infinite
answer.
ads.
That's a reference to season 2 of Monster Hour, folks. So if you want to find out anything, if you want to try and make sense of that question, good luck. But you can probably make some sense of it if you listen to season 2 of Monster Hour. Dixon says that's an acceptable answer.
Good. Okay.
What else have we got in here? Dixon doesn't have a copy of the book yet. He just wants to know if the book has possible cues for players and or GMs to help add a little bit of extra weird to their game.
Yeah, definitely. So there's, most PBTA games have like the player's agenda and the player's principles and the GM's agenda and the GM's principles, which sort of, give some, you can play the game however you want. Like I'm not your mom. But some guidance roughly for, how to embody the ethos of what the game is supposed to be. And I wrote it all a long time ago, so unfortunately I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. I suppose I could have prepped a little bit more. But there's definitely advice. This is the theme. I'm a low prep kind of
No,
GM.
don't worry.
person.
So am I. Don't worry. I feel you.
But yeah, there's there's definitely advice in there. So some of it is like when you're trying to create the sort of environment for Absurdia, when you're thinking about a threat, the goal is to kind of subvert this idea of normalcy. So you want to make ordinary things terrifying and terrifying things ordinary. So the everyday, walking down the street and the moon starts just having a conversation with you. Just, yeah, it's fine. That's normal.
but you see a car turn the corner, and that's horrifying because cars are sentient creatures and predators, and it starts chasing you down the alleyway. So you're taking something that is normal, cars, making it horrifying, a predator that is trying to kill you, and then taking something utterly abnormal, the moon talking to you, and making that an everyday occurrence, and having the rest of the people in town treat it as an everyday occurrence. That's an element and a sort of a key way of subverting what we understand as normal and adding that absurd element to the game. Thinking when you're thinking about what to do for your disturbance, which is what there's a lot of I feel like I descended from Monster of the Week, so I'm always hearkening back to what the equivalency is. But a disturbance is like a mystery for Monster of the Week. It's like it's the narrative, like a fully contained narrative story for players to sort of work through. There's different threat types for disturbances, but when you're trying to think about what a disturbance might be, one of the pieces of advice, go just sort of find a small suburb around you, or if there's not one nearby, go like find a community blog or like a small town newspaper or something, and just read some of the funny art, just really, really stranger than fiction things happen in small towns, and it doesn't take much of a stretch to like take that and twist it a little bit and make it into a disturbance or a threat for your players, because sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, even for a game of Absurdia. So yeah, the GM section in particular really tries to provide that framework for folks who are stepping into that role. The advice for the players is mostly like, do weird things, like those weird thoughts that you have in the back of your head when you're playing a role-playing game, and then you talk yourself out of it, or your GM talks you out of it, or one of your other players talks you out of it. Just do those weird things. Make that the centerpiece of your character.
Embrace your weirdness. Embrace the
Yes,
inner
exactly.
voice that is usually shushed.
Yes, exactly.
So, for those of you who are familiar with my Regate and Wolf podcast, that would be embrace your inner Meadow. She has no filter. Dixon's added another question. Actually, we'll go with what the Keylay says. You've designed a game for Tio, haven't you? And I was thinking that earlier.
Yes. Tio is having a fabulous time playing Absurdia.
Yeah. Is that what one of the reasons that inspired you for Absurdia was to give Tio a vehicle to play in and go wild?
No, because Tio will do that in any game. Anyone who listened to season 1 will know. But it is a very pleasant side effect of the way it's designed and structured, and the fact that we're doing it for season 2.
Yeah. Dixon wants to know, is there any special mechanic that you might like to change in a future update, or anything you'd like to add that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Good question. So the game, for anyone who doesn't know, Absurdia, I published what I've called like the 0.9 version. I published that in June. I did an itch funding campaign, and I'm working on the 1.0 version, which is going slower than I expected because I have a kid, and everything's slower. But so it's getting graphic design and layout, so it's gonna look nice beyond that one first picture. It is getting more illustrations from Kaylee, who did the cover illustration and did just a phenomenal job. I've seen she sent a few of the she's still working on some of them, but she sent a couple of the ones that I'm very excited about getting those out there. But there's also, so there's going to be some additional content for
GMs, about running one shots, running longer campaigns, some more like examples for different threat types, a little bit more information on factions. Specific mechanics wise, the one thing that comes to mind kind of off the top of my head is I'm probably going to do, because I miss the end of mystery questions for Monster of the Week. I feel like that was a nice kind of summation mechanic. I'm probably going to add a version of that to not just because I think it's helpful for the characters and also to sum up the arc, but also probably incorporate a little bit of experience. And then right now the game is kind of, there's no clear guidance for when a GM should offer to offer someone the ability to improve their reputation or their standing with a faction. And so we'll probably add some questions in that regard, saying like did you significantly aid or do a big favor to a faction? If so, take +1 reputation. Did you totally screw them over? Take -1 reputation. Something along those lines.
Yeah, that sounds good, because then it's also more individualized as opposed to everyone getting the same amount of XP through like Stun Monster. We've got a question from the real POTUS. Question: if 4+1 GM have a first time sit down with Absurdia, how much time budget for first session? I'm not sure if he means session 0 or the actual first session, but
yeah, that's a good question. It kind of depends on whether or not you've played a PBTA game before. If you've played a PBTA game before, and you're sort of familiar with how the character creation process goes, session 0 you could probably do in optimistic, but I would say an hour, maybe 2, depending on how much you want, like your players want to talk with each other when they're making their characters versus like they already have sort of their own idea. Running your first disturbance, it really depends on how you structure it and how detailed you want to go. Some disturbances can be relatively fast paced if you do something simple that's focused on doesn't have multiple threats. It's relatively straightforward, like a quest or a monster. 3 hours maybe less, depending on how fast you go and how much time each player wants to take. If you have something that's more nuanced, 4, 5, 6, maybe you want to split it into 2 sessions. But yeah, I'd say rough timeline, something like that.
Yeah, because I can't remember exactly how we did it. We did it mostly offline and a little bit together, mostly for the how our characters knew each other kind of thing, because there is a way to do that, just like there is in Monster of the Week, and I think that's the shared history of some kind. I think is really helpful and needs to be in D&D too. Oh my god.
What, you don't meet in a tavern every time?
No, or that you've been adventuring together for a while, and it's kind of like, have we? I don't know anything about anyone else's character,
Yeah.
But yeah, just that little, because even your agenda could mess with your other the other characters in there, because your agenda might go against someone else's agenda or what someone else wants to do. So it's not really that anyone is good or evil. It's just that there's a bit more in character problems or in character interactions you have to sort out and have. So which is great.
And there's meant to be a little bit of tension with the faction mechanics and things like that. The benefit of factions not being sort of openly hostile towards one another is like it shouldn't cause like the sort of rogue party member or bad party member D&D issue, but
there's that kind of inherent tension, which personally, I think is really fun, as long as all the players are sort of in alignment.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, it helps to have some bonds worked out ahead of time in a session zero to work through all of that.
Yeah, because me personally in D&D, I like to think, okay, well, who would my character actually like in the party, and who would they dislike and why, and then role play that out. Like, it doesn't have to be because they're an awful person. It could just be that their character has something they do that just really annoys my character for some reason. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, in
or
our
a different religion,
international. I mean, in our International Podcast Month episode, like you and Alice's characters, there was some friction there. Obviously, like we all had a fun time playing it, but like, you being sort of a cozy Netflix archivist.
Yep, I wanted to stay in my little cozy nest as an otaku and keep my friend Wendell with me, and she wanted us Wendell. She wanted Wendell, and to do that, she wanted him outside.
So you can play that that sort of friction in ways that are interesting to the story and fun for the players.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. It's just, to me, it makes things more interesting. Dixon says book flicks and Wendell.
Nice.
Yeah. You want to tell me a bit about how playtesting went? I mean, was it just you guys, or did you bring outside people in from elsewhere in the universe to try and not really break your game, but to finesse it or whatever? How'd that go?
Definitely. I actually play tested with quite a few groups, and I didn't start with the Monster Hour crew actually because I wanted to kind of get outside my usual group and get outside my head a little bit. So I have during the pandemic I had a online home game, and so with other game designers, so we tested each other's games semi regularly, and so I ran it with them a couple times in different iterations. I ran it for a couple different folks on the Cast Junkie server, Ian and Cap from Tripping Crits, and Reed from Bring Your Own Mech, and then ran it for the Monster Hour crew. And so I tried to get a different different groups of people into various iterations, and definitely had multiple rounds of like incorporating feedback and making tweaks and changes throughout the process.
Yeah. Did it change a huge amount from what you started with to what the finished product? Well, not really finished product, but 0.9 is at the moment. Sorry. Yeah.
Mostly finished. It's playable. I mean, the very first iteration I played, I hadn't settled 100% on PBTA, so I used kind of a bare bones system that one of my friends had devised for play testing. So the earliest iteration, it wasn't even in the same system. I didn't add faction moves until a fair amount of time in. Different playbooks changed significantly throughout the process. So there definitely was a lot of refinement and changes. Basic moves. I had a couple different basic moves, different outcomes, permutations, things like that. So it definitely evolved a fair amount.
Yeah. Do you think with version 1.0 you'll have any new character playbooks?
No, not for 1.0. I have a couple ideas for additional playbooks, but I'd probably introduce them in like some sort of supplement or something. Because I haven't play tested any of them. But
yeah, I have a few ideas. Like one would be the newcomer. So like the whole conceit of the game is this town, like nobody, you can't leave this town for whatever reason. The GM decides, but so newcomers are rare but possible. So you have someone who's like dropped in. It kind of almost like the mundane from Monster of the Week, but that's like very focused on like beginner's luck, and probably would play around with the faction mechanics. Probably let instead of having ratings, or maybe they could just roll cheek when making a faction move instead of rolling a rating, because they're a newcomer, they don't have reputation with factions yet. So something along those lines. I've got a few others floating around in my head, but I haven't really haven't gotten them in shape to talk about, I think. But definitely something I'm thinking about.
Well, in Monster of the Week, you can change playbooks. I don't know. I haven't read the whole book. I'm sorry, but is it possible
read
to
the entire book beforehand?
Is it possible to change playbooks? Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Is that because you level up enough, or because of a narrative reason?
Yeah, it's. I mean, with almost everything, it should generally happen for some narrative reason, but it's similar to Monster of the Week. It's a advanced improvement. So after you've leveled up 5 times, you can take an advanced improvement to change playbooks. So maybe you're I don't know, you're a rascal, which is kind of like a punk kid archetype, and or a troublemaking kid, and you stumble into some narrative ooze, and you become a gang of troublemaking kids, and you're a zeitgeist now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's Absurdia. There's all sorts of reasons that you might change playbooks.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone else has any other questions, I think we might start to wrap up here. So, any other questions for Quinn, for Absurdia, I guess for Monster Hour? What his favorite chocolate might be? Anything, I guess. He doesn't have. You don't have to answer, Quinn, if it's too personal. But yeah, I mean, chocolate flavoring is quite controversial, so I would understand if you don't want to answer a question like that.
Ooh, oh dear. Yeah, I might keep that one a secret. Gotta have a reason to bring me back.
Yeah, sure. Oh, Dixon says favorite Halloween candy, since Halloween's just happened.
Oh, yeah. All right. It's got to be Reese's Pieces.
Not candy corn? I thought Americans lived and breathed candy corn.
I do like candy corn. It is not my favorite candy by any stretch, but I'm not a candy corn hater. I do like candy corn.
Oh, okay.
I recognize that it's just high fructose corn syrup. I understand there's nothing else to it, but I still like it.
No, we can't handle that. Dixon says he's absolutely eating candy corn right now. He wants to know, what from your Halloween candy do you keep and what do you toss?
I mean, we don't really get trick-or-treaters because our front door looks like it's someone else's back door. So I haven't bought Halloween candy in, I don't know, years. We only bought it like the first 2 years we lived here. So I don't really, I don't know. I usually just pick myself up like, one little thing to resist or remove temptation of having too much.
Yeah. Tisk, you buy it and accidentally don't put it out. All right, he's got it. He's on to you, Dixon says. I love that whole front door looks like a back door thing. Yeah. But we've got that problem too. I mean, people tend to go to our back door because it's at the front of the house, but the front door is actually on the side of the house next to the driveway. It's some weird stuff. But yeah.
Yep, those quirks.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the reason why kids don't trick or treat at our place. It's because it's a back section and no one knows us, so they won't bring their kids here. So we're like, okay, cool. No, we don't have to bother with this. This is fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Last chance, folks.
Yeah, last chance. I do want to ask something about Monster Hour, though.
Sure. I love talking about Monster Hour.
Have you already planned season 3?
No.
Have an idea?
No, we have not.
No, you're not?
Nope. We're in the midst of season 2. We talked about a few games before we settled on Absurdia. We play tested a couple, so we might do one of those, but people are making cool games all the time, and we're finding out about cool new games all the time. So I don't know what season 3 will hold. I'm focused on season 2 right now.
Well, Michael Sands has got another game in the works, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe that.
Well, there's all sorts of cool games.
Mm-hmm. You might make a new game by then too. So
I might. I have other ideas. I'm focused on trying to finish making this game, but we'll see.
Awesome. Would you be interested in coming back on at some point, Quinn, and running a live stream Absurdia game for us? Or have I totally put you off with how it is so much more difficult because you can't edit?
No. I'd be happy to run a stream sometime. Folks who are familiar with listening to my edited podcast can see how much I edit out of my own filler words, if you haven't noticed already.
That's fine. They already know I edit a lot of mine out too. Oh my god, I can't believe how many ums and wells I kept saying last week while I was running it. I was like,
so many.
Don't do it.
Also, get ready for some dead space while I just think about what the hard move's going to be. But no, I'd be thrilled to run a game of Absurdia.
Awesome. I will hold you to that. And
yeah.
I'll see if I can get it to be on. So 2 to 4 players, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd prefer 3 or less, just because that's my personal opinion about how many players is the best. But let's make it happen.
Awesome. I will organize that for sometime in the future then.
Cool.
I thought he doesn't have much time. I'll just ask him to come on for an interview. I'll be nice. But then you are all like, oh, yeah, I'm playing lots of games. And I'm like, he's on so many other people's podcasts as running this game. Maybe I should ask.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll hold you to that. There have been a couple of comments. No actual questions, though. Real Potus says, thanks, Quinn, for agreeing to submit to this interview. And Dixon says, you will now be subsumed into the Zero Guest Zeitgeist. Welcome.
Yes, I love awesome. A good zeitgeist.
Yep. So do you want to pimp your stuff again, and we will end
oh
this in
yeah,
a
I probably should. Yeah. So you can get Absurdia at I'll drop it in the chat.
Oh, I got a link. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So you can get Absurdia at quinm.itch.io/Absurdia. If you buy a copy now, you'll get the updated version, and any sort of future updates. So now's the time. Get it on the ground floor, folks. Version 1.0 will come out when I finish writing things and when my graphic designer finishes graphic designing and when Kaylee finishes doing the illustrations. Anyways, we're all real busy right now, but it's coming along, I promise. And then you can check out Monster Hour wherever you get your podcasts. Search for Monster Hour. You can also go to monsterhour.podbean.com. We've got the first full season is all done and wrapped with a nice bow, and it's pretty great. I'm pretty proud of it. And then, but if you want to start with season 2, with Absurdia, we've got the first 11 episodes, and we're trucking away every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. So yeah, that's my stuff.
That's awesome. Yes, folks, there's a lot of stuff to binge if you want to go for Monster of the Week for their season 1. And like Quinn said earlier, they're up to episode 11, I believe, of season 2 with Absurdia. Yeah, these guys are really fun. You got to check them out. They're like we said, T.O. is probably the most out of the box thinker there. And they've got great music. I mean, I just edit my podcast. These guys actually include music and stuff. It's top tier, you know. We're low tier. They're top tier. So yeah.
No. We are very lucky that one of our crew members is not a professional sound designer, but a very skilled amateur sound designer.
Yeah, I've just got me, and I'm not musically talented or anything. And I'm just like, I just want to get rid of the breath noises. That's it. Just get rid of the breathing noises. That's all I care about. Tidy it up. No breathing noises. Just drives me insane.
No breathing noises. None whatsoever.
Yes, no one breathes.
We don't breathe on our podcast, folks.
No. So thank you very much to the audience for being here, giving us questions, and just being supportive. And I also want to thank Quinn very much for taking his time time out of his day to come and talk to us, answer our questions, and for just making Absurdia in the first place, because it is awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone who joined and asked awesome questions and let me talk about this game, which I really enjoyed making and am enjoying playing, and am truly loving seeing other people be excited about. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will be in touch and hold you to running a game for us. So
yes, definitely.
Yeah. And now we must wave awkwardly at the screen while I find the button to end it. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.